Okay, good morning all. The time is now 9:36 a.m. and I call to order the May 13th, 2023 meeting for the L.C. Whitlow Stokes Community Freedom Public Charter School Board for the Public Charter School Board of Trustees meeting. Welcome to our board meeting. My name is Hoy King and I am the board chair. Our board members present today are Dr. Anton Smith, Heather Harding, Crystal Galladay, Beatrice Carvalho, Amy Richardson, Tracy Freelander, Carlos Bonner, and Adina. The next item on the agenda, we constitute a quorum for today's meeting. The next item on the agenda is approval of the previous board's meeting minutes in March. Please review the minutes in the live binder. I'll give a period of time for that to happen.
Rodney Rice has also joined the meeting.
Good morning, Rodney. We just called the roll, Rodney, so we have a quorum.
Okay, great.
Just give it a couple minutes for the folks to read the live binder, to review the previous board's March meeting minutes in the live binder. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the March 2023 minutes?
I move to approve the March 2023 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Galladay.
You're welcome.
Can I get a second?
I second.
I'll second. Okay.
I have a motion and a second to approve the March 2023 minutes. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, let's have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the March 2023 board meeting agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Although any opposed, please say nay. Okay, the ayes have it, and the March 2023 board meeting notes have been passed. Excellent. So we are going to at this time transition into the committee reports. from the individual committee chairs. We will start with the governance board.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Only a couple announcements from the governance committee. We are continuing to work on our onboarding package for new board members. We are reviewing the bylaws and for needed updates and corrections. And we still are looking for trustees to provide any names who might be interested in serving on our board committees for the upcoming school year. So please forward those names to us. And that concludes our report for today.
Okay. Our what for our next development committee? Let's turn it over to Adina for an update.
Good morning, everyone. Short update from development. So I did receive a second draft copy of a general overview / proposal document from Erica. So thank you, Erica. I haven't even had a chance to communicate with you since you sent that. In the meantime, I had a meeting with someone in the philanthropy space who gave us some really helpful insight about, things that we need to include in a package, things that major donors are looking for. And so I had that conversation towards the end of March. So I need to incorporate some of those things into the document. And also, I think the next step for me is to help to get the document in a place where it's more narrative driven. And also from just a presentation standpoint, I think that, it probably will be worth looking into having a designer, kind of refresh the look of the branding in the presentation. Just looking at other school proposal documents, we just want to make sure that from a presentation standpoint that it's kind of sitting on the same plane. So the next steps for me is to go into the doc and try to make some suggestions on how we can frame it in a way that it's really telling a narrative about Stokes and its history, and then also looking into securing a designer to kind of help refresh the kind of brand look and feel of it. But that's where we are right now.
Okay, thank you, Adina. Next, we have our academic excellence committee will provide an update during our next board meeting. There was a outside circumstances that prevent her from being able to attend today's board meeting. Well, our next step is that we're going to transition to the executive director's report. Erica.
Good. Yes. Good morning. Let me share my screen. Just a moment. All right. So this morning, in the open section of the meeting, I'll be reviewing some updates with our school student enrollment, talk a little bit about the mayor's proposed budget and how that impacts funding for schools in the upcoming school year, information about immunization compliance, and also I'll talk a little bit about some upcoming end of the school year events. So this is the point in the school year where the My School DC lottery has just been completed. My School DC is the organization that handles applications and the common lottery process for all of DC public schools and the majority of DC public charter schools. This year, we currently have a waiting list. So we have gotten applications. The lottery process is complete. Applicants have been matched to schools. We are projecting at the Brooklyn campus that we will have a total of 358 students next year, which is on par with average. We currently have a waiting list at that campus of 1,086 students. This process, this whole enrollment process, will actually continue throughout the summer and into next fall. Stokes School takes students until the beginning of October of each school year. So these numbers will change. The waiting list will likely go up. It is possible that students who are currently enrolled will move out to other schools, but this is what we are seeing now, and what we are projecting for next year in terms of enrollment and waiting lists for the Brooklyn campus. At the East End campus, we are projecting a total number of students of 364. That is from pre-K through fifth grade, because we will be adding a fifth grade class, or our current fourth graders will be rising to the fifth grade. So we will be at full growth next school year at the East End campus. There is a much smaller waiting list for the East End campus. It is at 313 students currently, but just as at Brooklyn, enrollments will continue to take place through the summer and into the fall. So these numbers will likely change. Are there any questions?
Yes, this is Crystal Galladay, and I'm fielding questions for the East End campus parents. And several parents want to know, is there an update on the middle school expansion? And what was the outcome of the meeting with Phil Mendelson about the expansion?
There is no update on the middle school expansion. The last information that we gave out was that the Public Charter School Board shared with us that member schools of all of the member schools of DCI are currently prohibited from expanding beyond fifth grade, because we have assigned our rights and responsibilities for 6th through 12th over to DCI. We have not had a meeting with Mendelson. I did not schedule a meeting with Mendelson. I have been in conversations with the leaders of DCI and all of the other member schools. We are actually convening, so I guess this would be the update. We are convening a meeting among us in June to have discussions about how we believe we should move forward as a cohort. But I don't have any information about a Mendelson meeting. I did not participate in one.
Thank you. And I have another question, but I'll wait till later to see if it fits better. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Hi, Erica. Yes, it's Adina. Erica, I'm curious, the wait list, and I understand that the wait list and enrollment numbers will change in the coming months, but I'm just curious with that wait list number for Brookland, is that pretty much an average number that you've seen in recent years?
It ranges. Let's see, pre-pandemic, I think we had as high as 2,000 students on the waiting list between the two campuses. Since the pandemic, I think it has ranged from, 1,200, 1,500 between the two campuses. So it's on par with what has happened since the pandemic, but not pre-pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then we can move on to the Mayor's FY24 proposed budget. This is budgeting season for schools as well as the District of Columbia. The mayor has proposed her FY24 budget to City Council. They are in the process of marking up that budget now. The final budget should be passed by the end of this month. The mayor has proposed a 5.5% increase to the per pupil student allocation for next year. And that is for all schools, public charter and traditional public. For charter schools, there is a proposed 3.1% increase in the facilities allotment. There is also, you may have heard on the news, a proposed 12.5% increase for teachers in DCPS schools. That was negotiated by the Washington Teachers Union. The mayor is proposing a 12.5% increase for public charter schools as well, for teachers specifically. There's also suggested, proposed for the budget, a 7.6% retroactive payment. That would be to cover a 3.5% salary increase for school year 21-22 and a 4% for school year 22-23. This is also reflected in what the Washington Teachers Union had negotiated for DC public school teachers. Again, this is money specific for charter schools. This is money that will go specifically, that is currently tagged to go specifically for teachers. However, there are advocacy efforts that are ongoing to expand the definition of who this money can go to within charter schools. But currently, the way that the proposed increase is written, it is for teachers. And then finally, pertaining to the education sector portion of the mayor's budget, there is a proposed $19.8 million recovery fund for charter schools since the beginning of the pandemic. Charter schools have received various pots of COVID-related funding, either to assist us in adapting to in-person school in a COVID, in a pandemic, making updates to building facilities, purchasing PPE. The money allowed us to hire additional staff and so forth. We are weaning off of that money now, but the mayor has proposed to include almost $20 million in recovery funding for schools to help kind of soften the blow from us not receiving those other COVID funds. I want to show this comparison. It's actually a graphic from a charter school advocacy organization that shows a comparison between funding that DCPS receives as a sector and what DC public charter schools receive as a sector. There are differences in funding there should be parity between the two sectors. The School Reform Act of, I believe it's 1995, that created charter schools or helped to establish charter schools in the District of Columbia, calls for parity, equity, and funding between the two sectors. So the percentage of students who attend charter schools in Washington, D.C. is slightly lower than the percentage of students who attend traditional public schools in Washington, D.C. Charter schools are 40 some odd percent, DCPS is 50 some odd percent. But in terms of the per pupil funding that DCPS will receive next year, it's $1.127 billion, slightly more than the $1 billion that will go to DC public charter school student per pupil allocation. For capital improvement or facilities allotments, DCPS will receive $535.9 million, and DC public charter schools will receive $176 million. There's a whole host of funding that DCPS will receive outside of the per pupil funding allocation, including stabilization, early stages, impact bonuses that equate to a considerable amount of more money that DCPS will be receiving than DC public charter schools. The bottom line is that next year, the total amount of funding that's being proposed for DCPS is just over $1.9 billion, and the total amount of money that's being proposed for DC public charter schools is just over $1.2 billion, a difference of $700 million, considerable. Again, you may have seen on TV or heard on the radio or possibly read in papers different advocacy efforts to ensure parity and equity between the two sectors, to ensure that charter schools are funded at the same rate as DCPS, but that is an ongoing process. Any questions?
Yes, this is where the second question comes from. Are there any specific things because I know you talked about the budget for the mayor, but are there any specific things from a Stokes perspective that is being done to keep our strongest staff and motivate to secure quality new staff? And are there any changes we should be aware of? And this parent asked about like staff compensation, benefits, or strategies. So anything within that realm that you can talk about?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about personnel issues in the closed section of the meeting, but I don't want to talk about personnel issues in the open section. We have reserved a period of time after the open meeting to talk about these issues, and it is more appropriately addressed there.
But Erica, are there general approaches that the school is taking for retention?
Right, because this is a concern with the parents. So they just want to know, just in general, are there any strategies or just things that we're doing?
We have tried to address since the beginning of the pandemic issues of morale and support staff. For example, yesterday, or all of this past week was Staff Appreciation Week. And so in addition to what the PTA and PTO did for staff, Stokes School, yesterday had omelets stations for all of staff. We've had outings for staff. We brought in outings where staff has gone out together. We brought in food trucks. Let's see what else. We have organized different ways for staff to give feedback and input into planning for the next school year. We have helped to develop certain staff who have expressed an interest in leadership by supporting additional professional development opportunities. Let's see. Those are some examples of the ways that we have tried to support our staff and increase morale, as well as help to develop them professionally.
Thank you.
Erica, this is Adina. I have a couple of questions, but I guess just to piggyback on the question that was just asked, I'm curious, my assumption is, and also just from, absorbing the news out there, is that this is like a sector-wide issue, right? Obviously retention is not unique to Stokes, but have you, just from your vantage point, are you seeing teachers or staff leading to go to school systems that may have, kind of newer, more innovative approaches to retention? Or would you say generally that, this is right now, it feels more like a sector-wide issue nationwide?
We have been discussing for the past couple of years that Stokes is not immune to the Great Resignation. Prior to COVID, we had some of the lowest attrition rates in the city. Since COVID, our attrition rates have been, 15, 20%. It fluctuates. We see staff burn out completely, staff who have left the field of education. We see staff who have gone to other schools and been able to make higher salaries. We have staff who have moved out of town because of family obligations. It's a range of influences and reasons. But yes, this is not at all unique to Stokes. It is happening in schools all over the district. It is happening in schools all over the country. If I haven't, I know that I have shared with the board since the beginning of the pandemic how much of a challenge this whole process has been, not just for teachers, but other staff and leadership. And it is reflected in what's happening around the country.
Okay, thank you. Really quickly, just a second question. So when you were reporting out about the mayor's, the mayor's budget, I just want to make sure that that one of my takeaways is correct, which is that it sounds like it's generally good news, like some of these increases that are included in the mayor's new budget, right? Like that it indicates progress. Would you say that that's accurate?
It is absolutely good news that we're getting 5.5% increase in our UP SFF because there have been times when it hasn't been that much. It is good news that we are getting an increase in our facilities funding. It is also good news that we'll have additional funding to pay for teachers and recovery funding. So all of that is great. The issue is the inequity in funding between sectors. I just mentioned that some teachers have left because they are able to get higher salaries in other schools. If there were equity in funding, for example, it would be much easier for Stokes to compete with some of the school systems that pay considerably more money.
And do you think that part of that, do you think that part of that disparity is because traditional DCPS schools are not able to seek private funding, and I don't even know if that's correct, versus charter schools are? I'm just curious to try to get to like what the justification for the
It has been,
is.
yeah, it's been an ongoing issue since charter schools were established in DC 26 years ago.
Okay.
It is, yeah, this is not anything new. There have even been lawsuits brought on behalf of the charter sector to ensure equity, but it has not come to fruition yet that charter schools receive the same amount of money as traditional public schools.
Okay.
But
Thank you. It sounds very complex, So I appreciate your top lines. I'll have to do some more digging into just the history of it all, but that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I just wanted to say, to echo what Erica said, this is a nationwide issue, and there are a lot of different factors that I think affect people's decision to stay at schools. But it is something I think that Stokes needs to think about in terms of what we can do as a school to retain the best. And it's quite a challenge everywhere. I mean, even my current school, which is an independent school, I don't know how many people are leaving for various reasons, but a lot of it is economic. So I just want to say that it's not unique we're not unique in that way. It's a nationwide issue.
Okay.
You know, and if a couple thoughts on that too. So on its surface, 15%, 20% plus retention rate sounds relatively high. But I think we always have to think about this stuff in context. So when we think about it in context, especially compared to what DCPS is actually experiencing, it's actually a pretty relatively low attrition rate for the school. So I think if memory serves me correctly, the city council is actually just last month started considering a bill to help with the DCPS retention, because the DCPS teacher retention, because their rates of attrition are around 30%. So I think what the school is experiencing is an attrition rate which is less than the DC public school system is experiencing. And the DCPS teachers have the might of the city council actually stepping in to consider different retention policies, prospective policies, like to help improve that number. So it is relative. It's high.
And if I may comment, again, to put it in perspective, historically, Stokes's attrition rates among teachers has been something like 2 or 3% annually. So this is a big jump for us, but it is not a big jump. I mean, it's not the size jump it is for other schools. We, of course, would like to get back down to that lower attrition rate, but there are a number of things the school can do, and which Erica is going to talk about some, but also there are a number of things that are going to need to happen more globally in our society to change that. So our attrition rate is not merely a response to what's happening at the school, it's also a response to what's happening in people's lives.
Yep, that's a good point, Ms. Long.
Okay. You may recall that again, since the beginning of the pandemic, immunization rates across the district among students, and this is for just the standard immunizations. We're not talking about COVID, but immunization rates have been down. So there's been a real push across the city with the Department of Health, the state superintendent of education, to increase immunization rates around among children. And this year, there were awards given to schools that hit certain benchmarks in their immunization rates. And one of those awards was given to our Brooklyn campus that achieved a 90% immunization compliance. The East End campus came in close, didn't quite make it, but it was 81%, but still pushing for compliance among our students. So that's a bit of good news. My last slide here for the open portion of the meeting is upcoming events that we have coming at school, including a jazz and poetry in the garden celebration at the Brooklyn campus on June 2nd from 5 until 8 p.m. All are invited. We will have our first annual Founders Day celebration honoring our founder, Linda Moore. This year it falls on June 15th and will be celebrated at the East End campus starting in morning lineup. We have our Stepping Up Day ceremonies for our kindergarten students at each campus on the 21st of June. The times will be announced as the date approaches. And we will have our 5th grade graduation ceremony. Trustees are encouraged to come and be a part of the celebration. This will be at the Brooklyn campus on the 22nd of June at 9:30 a.m. And we ask that if you do come, trustees, that you let us know in advance so that we can acknowledge your presence. Any questions? Okay. So that concludes the open portion of my presentation, but I think that Bill is here. Wait, if you want to continue.
Okay, thank you. I was on mute. Thank you, Erica, for that update. If there are I'll ask one more time if there are any questions for Erica before we transition over to the Finance Committee report. Okay, we're going to transition over to the Finance Committee. Carlos is the chair of the Finance Committee, and Bill will, of course, is the business manager for the school. Carlos, is there anything you'd like to comment on before Bill gets started? You're on mute, Carlos.
Yeah, before Bill gives a more detailed overview, just to let everyone, the Finance Committee has met with the school administration on various attributes of the school's processes and day-to-day management that affect the financial well-being of the school. And based upon the report, we think the school is in a good position. There have been several challenges this year that we've worked through, and I commend the school for working diligently, and the school being Bill, Erica, and all of the staff that support them to rectify some of the issues. But there are still some key initiatives that we will continue to focus on for the remainder of this year, and that we will continuously to report on as they become reportable. So Bill, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Happy
Morning.
Mothers. And I'm going to start with the March financials. I'll go over our income versus budget, and that's year to date through March. Let me share my screen and hopefully I'll get the right one up the first time. By Jove, I did it. Okay. So right now, through March, overall, the financials look pretty good. And I'm going to just go through this quickly. As you can see, total income from a budget point of view was 12.2. What we were budgeted at this time is 12.2. We're at 12.9. So we're over budget by 6%, which is wonderful. It's like $700,000, which is very good that we do have that, because when you get down into the expenses are over budget by about 4%, so about 400,000 over. And the main driver to that is really our professional fees, our direct student professional fees. As you can see from a budget point of view, we're over budget. And part of that could have been, on my part, not anticipating the needs of the students and, based on the prior year. But overall, as you can see, we're ahead of budget by 300,000 from a surplus point of view. So things are looking fine right now. Are there any questions on the income statement? Okay. I'm going to quick show the balance sheet, because as everyone knows or has ever been through one of these, that is my favorite place, especially the cash position. And that is what I want to share. As you can see, last year at this time, we really had some challenges as far from a cash point of view, because a number of our grants were really hadn't been approved. It was just the nature of the grants themselves. But as you can see, from a cash point of view, we're up $1.4 million. And that always warms my heart when there's more money in the bank, as everyone knows. But overall, as well, as you can see, the receivables are up as well. So, overall, that's real positive. Our payables are down quite a bit, and that had to do with actually just one invoice that was fairly large that, something happened to that we didn't pay it by March. It should have been, but we paid it right after that. So overall, as you can see, we're doing pretty well here. But any questions on our balance sheet? Okay. And one final thing, at the last meeting, Carlos had discussed where we'd end up the year. As you all know, we have the budget and we do track it as we go along, but we're also trying to project where we're going to end up here. So as we do this, I did a forecast back in March, and at that time it didn't look very good at the point. It looked like we were going to have a deficit of almost $300,000, and that was something that was troubling, and we were looking to see, if there were any steps we needed to take or whatever. I ended up doing, I redid the forecast, as you do, because you go through the different pieces, and it's turning out to look a lot better. And one of the drivers, and this was something that was sort of unanticipated, was our per pupil funding, because the forecast that I based the March forecast on, or the per pupil payment we got, was a lot lower than the final one we got in the fourth quarter. So we picked up probably $300,000, which erased the deficit that it looked like we were going to have. And that's always a nice surprise. But as you all know, as we do budgeting and as we do all these things, everything's sort of in a flux. Even when we budget, we don't know exactly what the per pupil is going to be, what the enrollment's going to be, anything like that. Those are the things that change. Even at the beginning of the year, we don't know sometimes till the fourth quarter payment what are, the payments will be. So that is my presentation for the open meeting. Are there any questions?
Yes, Bill, what is the projected surplus for the end of this fiscal year?
It's a break even, about $1,000.
Okay, thank you.
So Bill, just to, I'm sorry, Carl's, anything you'd like to add before we close this section out?
No.
So Bill, just to piggyback off of what you said, and I think that and keep me honest here, Bill, I think that the $300,000 that you mentioned that we received was part of the reconciliation that DC Public Charter School Boards per pupil and DC Public Charter School Board per pupil funding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Nicely done. Were there any other questions for Bill at this time, or Carlos? Okay. All right. If that's the case, give me 1 second, please. Okay. Are there any, if that is the case, I'll ask this one. I'll ask this question. I'll ask this one more time. Are there any questions for Erica or the committee meetings, or for Erica on the executive director's report, or any of the committee meeting members on their respective reports before we go into closed session? Okay. If that's the case, the board will now adjourn the open meeting and will go into closed session pursuant to DC Code 2575B3 to discuss, establish, or instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken in negotiating incentives relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses or business activities in the district. And DC Code 2-575B10 to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, performance evaluation, compensation, discipline, demotion, removal, or resignation of government appointees,